sure I wasn't able to kind of make decisions and stand by them. I had a really deep sense of sort of imposter syndrome. My confidence sort of plummeted. I was kind of questioning myself, things that I was doing.
Because the moment I was like, no, I'm not going on payroll, I need to invoice. They were like, all right, let's add. I had my child at 16. So I was more like, no, I can't do that. They're like, Charles, why is everything wrong with you? You're holding a baby and holding an infant.
And I spent the money on the offices, and we were getting it all kitted out, and we had a launch and everything, and literally within 4 weeks the turnover plummeted. And I kept thinking next month it'll be better, and started ploughing in money to keep the business going, to keep the staff on.
I didn't really have that much money. I had my savings, but I don't come from a family of privilege. I come from a working class family. So I had all of these kind of barriers that at the time I didn't realise were barriers. I just got on with it and just moved. I moved without thinking. I had an idea.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of She's the Boss, Female Entrepreneur Stories, where I'm joined by phenomenal women who have taken that leap and decided to go alone in the world of business and entrepreneurship. If you haven't already done so, make sure you click subscribe so that you're the first to know when I release a new interview. And if you're not already following on social media, give me a follow. On Instagram, I'm She's the Boss UK. On Twitter, at She's the Boss INTL, and on Facebook, Daniela Genus, She's the Boss. So connect with me. Today, I am joined by Yvette Ankrah MBE and Dr. no less. Yvette, tell us all about you, your career, what you're doing presently, and how you came to be an Mbe recipient. I'm quite interested to hear about that.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey, a long one. So I actually started off life as a journalist. That's what my training was. I was writing when I was 16 for magazines and interviewing people like Andrea Levy, Courtney Newland. So I was really kind of in the space of the black art scene in the UK. And I was also interviewing musicians and things like that. So that's what I started life doing. And then I went off to do a degree in journalism and psychology, and then moved off into press, PR and marketing, and then went to that space. And in that world, I found myself working 12-hour days and kind of burning myself out, really, and realised that that was not really the space for me. So I kind of was doing things all the way through. I was doing side gigs. So I had a different side hustle, whether it was writing for other people, whether it was bid writing. I did a range of things purely because I was bored for a lot of it and then completely unfulfilled. And, with the whole 12-hour day life and realising that wasn't a space for me, I moved into the voluntary sector. But I still did work as in corporate fundraising, training, development. So that's how I moved into those skills. And, whilst I'm doing this, I'm still developing myself. So I still did courses and training. I'm a bit of a training junkie. I think if you're going to have an addiction, training and qualifications, it's not too much of a bad one. But in terms of that world, I use the title of recovering overachiever, and I do so because of that desire to strive and push for success and what that did with my health and well-being. So now in my day job, I am a coach, a transformational coach. I work with neurolinguistic programming, which is all about how your behaviours impact your thoughts, to be honest, your thoughts and emotions, etc., impact on your behaviours and your outcomes and your habits. So I work with changing that story if that story doesn't work for people. I'm a performance coach. I also did training, coaching and mentoring. And I've come to that space through all the years of different things I've done and through my own personal journey, which has been one that has involved stress, burnout, overwhelm, burnout multiple times because I'm stubborn. And, it's that kind of thing. So I talk about self-care and things a lot now. And I primarily work with women in leadership or business owners. And I say primarily because in some of my practice, I am a partner in a consultancy. I work with men in that space. But as a coach, primarily it's women. And that's that kind of journey. So I burnt out the first time in that first corporate role. And what I did was continue the same habits and behaviours and just take them to a different location. So it would be, I'm living for the weekend and I'm living for holidays. And the idea would be, right, once I've had this spa break, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be totally fine. But then if you go back to doing exactly the same things you were doing before, well, you're going to get the same results. And it took a long time for me to really address that and change those habits, because they were habits. And the warning signs have been there, and I just ignored them. I ignored the pains, I ignored the strange sleep, I ignored it all because I thought, well, you know, you're driven, you're focused, this is what high achieving does. Great. And then I started working for myself. And I became a mother as well. So those two big issues, I left London, I became a mother, and I relaunched my business. And all of those things happened at the same time with that combination of habits and behaviours. Let's just say it didn't go too well. You know, and I'd taken on the PhD as well because, hey, why not? And, you know, so I'm running a business, I've got a small child, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm running a campaign, and I collapse at home.
Oh, wow.
And from there, the journey of being diagnosed with fibromyalgia and having to learn to go from being 100 miles per hour, 110 miles per hour to barely being able to get out of bed was quite a painful one. But using the techniques and the knowledge, I've helped myself come through that.
I'm sure it must have been quite a terrifying experience as well. So when you had, so that was the second time you had burnout. How did it manifest?
That was the third. I think that was about the third.
So
multiple times across the career.
How did it manifest differently the previous two times? Because I'm assuming it was when you collapsed that you then took, I suppose, a little bit more stock. What was happening the first two times that didn't get you to stop?
Yeah. No, so the first time I noticed that there was a serious issues when I hadn't slept for 2 days straight.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And I felt a bit manic because I hadn't slept. But we had a lot of stuff going on, and I thought, you know, this is what you asked for. You're in this career, you're in PR, you know, it's glamorous. People, you know, give their right arm for this in their 20s. Yeah, no, I just lost that energy. I lost the passion for things. I didn't want to do things, but the issue was I was still showing up and still getting results. So my clients were still getting results. People were still happy. My work didn't drop to the point that somebody noticed that there was something wrong. I knew that there was something wrong. And it got to that point when I said, you know what, this isn't right. But then I left that role for other reasons. It wasn't even the burnout that made me leave the role. It was a contributing factor, but it wasn't that. It was only when I was away that I kind of had a bit of space to think, oh, this wasn't how you want to live your life. But then again, moved into another role and still did if I'm not working hard and grinding my body into the ground, I'm not doing enough.
Yeah. It's crazy how, as overachievers, because I'm a self-confessed overachiever, we do ignore those signs. And also when the results, as you mentioned before, when the results are still good, I'm like, well, it's still working, so I'm just going to keep on going. I remember when I started my first business, working sometimes till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then getting back up at like 7, and which is early for me, and doing it all again, all day. And if on the weekends I wouldn't stop, I would just go. And I don't think I ever had a proper burnout to the same degree as you did, but I did get to a point where I said, actually, this is not a pleasant way to live, and I don't enjoy it. And I think we don't stop enough and ask, are we enjoying this? And we do focus on this, what you said, and it's a really important point that you made. I wanted this, loads of other people would want this, so what's the problem? But actually, if you're not happy, that's the problem. It doesn't matter if 10,000 people would want it. It doesn't matter if you had wanted it since the day you were born. If it's not making you happy right now, and particularly if it's making you ill, then clearly this is not the right path. So you got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Tell us more about kind of the impact that had on, because you said obviously it was quite devastating. How did it impact the desires and the goals that you had for your kind of career? How did they shift? How did they change? You said you then kind of worked yourself out of that. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
So the diagnosis, me being me, my first thing was to fight it, was to ignore it and to say, well, nobody is the boss of me. I will do what I'm going to do, diagnosis or no diagnosis. So I would push through, and it was sheer stubbornness, determination, focus that would make me push through some days. However, at this point, I'm in my 30s. I've got a young child. I'm running a business and studying with all of these things. And it's kind of like, actually, maybe this might be a bit much. But I still didn't want to take the brakes off. I still, didn't put the brakes on, should I say. I still wanted to achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And it took me a while to realize that actually I was not going to be able to do that in this way. So I had to learn something called pacing. So anyone that's ever had chronic ill health or long-term conditions, you have to decide how much you're going to do and what you're going to do. So it's, if I clean the house, I can't then look after the child and the client. I can't do both. I can't do all those things. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to get a cleaner because I can't do that one. Done. Because if I did that, I'd be lying in bed for a week. So it's about the choices you make, and having those kind of constraints frustrated me no end. And I spent a lot of time with anger and frustration as my main kind of energy there, because it was a battle. And then I kind of had to take a different take with it. And it's kind of, hang on a second. You're here, this condition, to tell me something. What is it you're here to tell me? Well, you weren't listening when I was telling you this stuff before. So I whispered. I said, do you mind slowing down a little bit? Do you mind doing things differently? Ignored me. So I had to shout. So it's like, okay, right. Heard you loud and clear, body. I'm listening. What do we do? So I went from fighting to seeing my condition as my self-care partner. When I started to do too much, it would pull me back. And then I started to say, do you know what? I'm ready to not live in this way anymore. And that only happened when I was hospitalized yet again and had a lumbar puncture done, which is incredibly painful. I mean, I did a natural birth with gas and air. Believe me, the lumbar puncture hurt more.
Wow.
So in recovering from that, I says, I can't do this anymore. I cannot have this as my world anymore. And I need to truly change, not just kind of talk about it, actually do it and take that intentional action to make a difference in my world. So that's what I did. I changed. There were certain projects I was involved in which were not bringing me joy. I let them go. I looked at what the things I needed for me, what I wanted to do. And then I started tackling the inside. Why did this show up in the first place? What was going on? And it's not always nice to face some of these things. It's not always nice to explore the deep stuff that you happily ignore and bury and just push past. And that's what I did. And I went off to do my Nlp training. And I didn't do that for me. I did that because I wanted to bring an extra layer of work to my clients. I've done some of it, but not fully trained in it. And during that training, we did a lot of deep work. You do a lot of work on yourself. And in that space, I was able to truly explore what was going on and completely let a lot of things go. And by the time I'd finished the course, I had no symptoms. And I've been completely symptom-free since. So it's just a very interesting journey, because our minds are incredibly powerful and we're very connected. And your body, if there are aches, pains, things coming up, a lot of things are showing other things. And if you ignore them and suppress them, it will keep coming back until you deal with it in some cases. And that's where stress and burnout happens. When you're in that space, your body will tell you. It will tell you. And it's your job to start listening.
Yeah, I think that's where so many of us go wrong, because we don't listen. I'm a huge advocate, as much as I am was it an A-type personality, I also am very big on the idea of rest and rejuvenation, and taking time out, and I'm very intentional with it. So I can work from Monday to Monday. However, within that Monday to Monday window, there will be parts of the day where I just lie in bed and watch the TV, where I will just sit and read a book. So I might start work at 10 and work through till lunchtime, but then from lunchtime for 2 hours, I will just lounge around, eat, sit down, and I'm very intentional about that. There's certain evenings that I will not take out the laptop, and those evenings are just for me to relax. I do client meetings sometimes on a Saturday morning, but if I do them on a Saturday morning, that means there's no work for the rest of the Saturday, and it's just rest and relaxation. And I think that there is this, particularly, and I speak about this a lot, with the rise of social media and the kind of influencer, entrepreneur, hustle, stop when you're dead, and all of that, we can often feel guilt for not going as hard as we think that we can. But actually, you can't really go that hard, because as you've mentioned, you can do it, but then there's always going to be a repercussion. So it's important to take heed of those things and I suppose prevent them before they even get to the point where you're collapsing.
Exactly. So that's part of my mission, to help women prevent that burnout, prevent that stress and overwhelm. And here's the thing, I'm still driven. I'm no less driven than I was. I just operate differently.
Yeah.
I don't go about it in the same way. Like yourself, I understand about the breaks, the times, the rest. And rest means different things to different people. So for some people, rest is walking. That's how they rest. It's about resting your mind, not necessarily just your body. It's about being able to go into a mindful space. And I do have a complete kind of anti-hustle culture belief system, because that space of, let's go until we're dead, and it's like, well, no, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do this to yourself? And that belief system that you're not successful if you are not doing that is really damaging, and that is actually contributing to burnout. It is a recipe for burnout. And the reason I'm an advocate for self-care is because self-care is a way of building your resilience, helping you to come through stressful periods, and also helps you mitigate against burnout. And if you are in that space, it is a tool that also helps you come out of that. And by practicing that, and with self-care, I'm not just talking about spa days, which is part of it, but it's not just that. It's about the daily habits. I do love a spa, if it doesn't, but actually I do some pretty fun. It is about the daily practices and habits and behaviors that you have that contribute to your well-being. It's drinking water, it's stretching your body, it's phoning your friend, it's having a hug. It's all of these different things that constitute those things that keep you well in all ways. And it's not about being selfish. This idea that self-care is indulgent, it's luxurious. And because of that, it's almost like we don't deserve to do this, and it's a special occasion thing. Oh no, you deserve it every day. And it's not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is important for you to do this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be financially expensive for you to take time for yourself. Sitting, reading a book, having a cup of tea with no interruption, that's self-care. That's still part of self-care.
I think quiet time is so underrated. And particularly during this whole pandemic and that kind of thing, a lot of people have been forced to sit in silence a little bit more than they're used to. And as much as I think this whole situation is a disaster, I think from that respect, being forced to sit in silence sometimes, there has been some benefits to that for those that have been able to do it. And actually going on from that, you said you became a mother, and becoming a mother influenced and impacted how you do business. What was the journey like, becoming a mother, and I suppose now having an additional person to be responsible for, but then also having business, and how have you kind of integrated the two, motherhood and business? And have there been any particular struggles that you found with that? Because I don't think enough mums in business talk about the hard times. It's all okay, I've worked it out, we juggle and we make it work, and it's all great. But actually, as a mother in business, I know that sometimes it is difficult. What say you?
It's incredibly difficult, because your child wants your attention. They want to engage with you, and there's times when you're focused on something else, or you need to be focused on something else, or they're ill and you just need to be with them, and that there's a deadline or whatever's happening, but that's where you need to be there right now. So it is a juggle, and it can be hard. It was tougher when he was tiny. He's now 9, he's going to be 10 at the end of this year. I can't believe I have a 10-year-old. That's just like, a bit crazy, who's nearly towards me. So, you know, it is difficult. And what I did was work around a lot of his needs. And as he's got bigger, I pulled back and worked around a lot of mine. And with the actual business, when I first started in business, I was working with arts organisations. And when I left London when I was pregnant, I left London, I realised that I wasn't going to go back to doing that. And I had my son and took a bit of a break because I started to get ill not that long after he was born. And my husband was like, go to some mother and baby groups. And I'm like, why? Why am I doing that? So, you know, he thought I needed to socialise. I'm like, but, you know, why? It was just, for me, it was just a bit kind of, okay, we've had babies, yes. But apart from that, what am I going to have in common? It's just, we've had babies, right? It's just kind of, it's not like it's same to go to a business networking group, but same to go to mother and baby groups. So I went along to these groups and we talked babies about that much. We talked business that much. So I kind of was meeting women who had businesses that people didn't know about, wanted to start businesses and didn't know how to go about it. And I realized that my skills in business development and marketing and everything else, and already started the coaching journey, could be transferred to work with these women. So that's what I did. So I changed my business model, relaunched it, and focused on women. Mm-hmm. And that's how that change came about, through becoming a mother and working in that way. So even becoming a mother changed my business, and wanting to launch the business was also part of the fact that I needed to get out of the house. Mm-hmm. I needed to speak to adults. And I was never someone who's going to be a stay-at-home mum. It was never going to be part of my journey. Mm-hmm. I take my hat off to those who do it. It's not me. And I always knew that about my person. Mm-hmm. And I thrive with the work, and I feel that I'm better with the mothering when I'm doing those things as well. Mm-hmm. Because then that's my time. Then I can switch and have this time. All day long with a small child is not for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's each to their own. And I've had people. It's interesting when you sort of do meet sort of mothers. You have some people that have said, but why do you want to go back to work? I'm like, because I love what I do. My
question is, why don't you? I don't understand why you don't want to go. That's a better question for me.
Well, for me, it's kind of, if you've made a choice and those are your choices. And again, it's if you have made a choice, because a lot of people I met along didn't have a choice simply because their work wasn't flexible enough. Mm-hmm. The distance didn't work. Childcare wasn't happening. So they didn't have the choice of going back to what they loved, and they've had to change. And when you asked about the MBE, I got that for campaigning for more support for women in business. And that was, I co-wrote the manifesto for women in business, and this was back in 2015 that we launched this campaign. Mm-hmm. And part of that campaign was to get support for self-employed, because there was no safety net. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To also get more representation at higher levels. At that time, we didn't have as many female MPs as we then have later gone on to have. There was also no back to work schemes. So now you see this, lots of schemes with big companies and the civil service saying, if you've taken time out for caring for whatever reasons and you wish to come back in, now you're having that. So, because business is not for everybody. But, if you've trained and spent years qualifying for something and you'd like to get back into it, but the lack of flexibility means you cannot, these schemes enable you to have mentoring, training, support, and often a job at the end of it.
Well, I think, again, speaking of I don't like saying positives, but the positives of the whole pandemic, so many businesses that refused before, and I've spoken about this quite a bit on the series, who have said previously, oh no, we can't take you on if you need to do the school run. We need you in the office from 8:30 to 5:30, which obviously is not conducive with the school run, so we can't give you the job, or we're taking away your job. Now, what is the argument going to be? Because actually so many people have proved that we can work flexibly, we can work from home, and we don't have to be in an office from 8:30 or 9 to 5:30. So I'm hoping that that's going to make a significant impact on opportunities for women moving forward, because the argument cannot be presented in the same way anymore.
It can't be. I mean, my husband has always worked in the city his whole career, and it's always been very difficult for him to work flexibly. And now it's like, well, there is no argument. However, the pandemic is incredibly gendered. Women have been disproportionately affected in terms of jobs, in terms of self-employment, in terms of the homeschooling and childcare, in terms of caring for elders. The impact has been phenomenal on women, the growth of domestic violence as well. And in terms of when people have been let go, it's been women. So, and what you're finding, the stats that I've found at the moment are very US centric, but a lot of women have left the workplace. I mean, hundreds of thousands of women have left the workplace because they cannot deal with the level of domestic things that they need to do on top of the day job. So, I'm homeschooling at the moment. So it's a juggle.
I have been on a one-person campaign with myself to stop calling it homeschooling, because I feel like calling it homeschooling has so many connotations. First of all, my house is not a school. I'm not a teacher. I didn't choose this lifestyle. I'm not doing it full-time and only because we've got other things to do. I don't have any experience in doing this. The typical homeschoolers previous to COVID, they were homeschooling groups. They could take their kids to museums, to libraries, to all sorts of things that contributed to the homeschooling experience and meet up with other homeschoolers. We can't do that now. So I'm on a mission. Every woman I speak to, and particularly women, because as we said, it's mainly women that do it. We need to stop calling it homeschooling. It's home learning. I'm trying to help them learn at home. I'm not a school and I'm not a teacher. And it really annoyed me when this lockdown was coming, and there were so many people saying, just lock down the schools. We need to lock down the schools. I don't know why anybody would want to send their kids to school. I'm like, well, actually, if you're a woman that's at home with an abusive husband or partner or something, and you know that the children now are going to be at school and the abuse levels are going to go up, you don't want the schools locked down. If you're a single parent that's trying to work and you're going to have your 3 kids climbing all over you and doing all sorts, you don't want your kids to be at home. Nobody wants the pandemic, obviously, to get out of control, but I just think there was a real lack of compassion and empathy for the reasons why people would still want to send their kids to school. And there's so many valid reasons of why. So with your home learning, because I don't ascribe to the homeschooling thing, how have you managed to continue to service your clients, but also ensure that your son is getting the support that he needs?
We are very lucky that his school are doing live lessons. So he has live lessons at certain periods in the day, and then input from one of us. So today, for example, he knows that I'm in meetings at a certain time, and he also knows when his father's available. So in that time when we cannot be present for him, I've said, you can call your teacher, you can get support for that. But we also did a quick run through of his morning lessons so that he knew what to do. And we answered questions before we went off. So we mix and match, but my schedule can be a bit more flexible. Like you, I could work evenings and weekends. There are some things that are fixed, but where possible, I've kind of moved my diary around to enable space for him, because it's also a very difficult time for children.
Yes.
He can't socialize. He's an only child. So understanding that this is really hard for him, it's hard for everybody, particularly because the weather hasn't been great. We can't always just go out. And it's just holding space for everybody. And the word that's been used is compassion. Showing compassion for ourselves, compassion for, to know that it is hard. It's okay to say it's hard. I did a post to say, look, people, give yourself a break. We're tired. We're tired. It's exhausting.
Yes.
And it's okay to say, do you know what? I'm tired. I'm doing this, and I love this, I love that, but I just need to lie down somewhere hot, preferably with a cocktail in my hand, and just relax. And that's the feeling, and it's truth and being authentic and being honest with that, and allowing. There's a lot of allowing. The pandemic has been an interesting time because I work from home normally, so I'm based here. Well, I do go out to see clients. I do go out to give talks, but being based at home, it wasn't strange for me being able to deliver training or coaching via Zoom. I've been doing it for the last few years. It wasn't weird.
Yeah, same.
But having everybody around was another different. So, you know, to begin with, my husband was in my office. So there's
me too.
And, you know,
Door shut.
if ever a lawyer was going to get called, it was at that point. So we realised that this thing was going to go on. So in the summer, we changed one of the other rooms into his office. Mm-hmm. And that was needed because also the kind of work I do with my clients, he needed to not be in the room. I couldn't have a client session with him there. So it became awkward. So for a long time in the pandemic, I didn't do client sessions because it wasn't conducive. Mm-hmm. I did talks, did lots of talks instead. Or I did things in the evening, on the weekends. So I had to, you know, rearrange it. So now I can still go back to those client sessions I have. And some of my sessions can be 3 hours if I'm doing transformation work. Mm-hmm. And it's getting that understanding, getting that support and saying, look, you know, this is where I am. What's your schedule looking like? Book that in so that we've got a bit of an overlap for that. And just working. I keep saying, I have a house. I have food in my cupboards. Mm-hmm. We've got a little terrace and there's woodland 5 minutes from my house. I feel blessed. I feel completely blessed. I'm not on my own. I'm not in a little flat. I'm not stuck. I'm not worrying about my next meal. So even though things have been hard, those things haven't been. And, you know, we're all in different boats, but we're all facing this differently. And I've had people say, I don't feel I can complain about my life because I know people have it worse. Yes, someone's going to have it worse than you, but you can still say, actually, I don't enjoy this. I'm not happy in this situation. And those feelings are still valid. Yeah. It's okay to say, I'm not enjoying this. You know, it's okay. Why would you? No one's necessarily enjoying this.
No, I'm a big advocate for that. I remember last year I spoke about it on my social media and in a few of my interviews to say that first lockdown, there were several times that I sat on the floor with my back against the door, my daughter banging on the door and me crying like, I cannot take this for another second. Again, I have a beautiful house, have a lovely garden, like we've got food. But right now, I just need a bit of peace and quiet. And she wasn't sleeping, so I was waking up and she was there. I was going to bed and she was there, and I just need a break. And actually, I'm quite happy to communicate that because I think there were so many people saying, "Oh, we can't complain or we can't moan because we're blessed." Yes, we are blessed, but that doesn't mean that this is not a struggle and it's not a challenge.
Your emotions are still valid, and there's been a lot of grief and loss as well. You know, we've lost friends, we've lost family, we've lost, you know, and the hardest thing is for us not being able to come together and grieve or support people who are grieving. You know, ordinarily anything happens, we're there, you know. I've had a nephew born and I've not seen him. And that again is with family. You know, we're kind of, family is really tight for us, so missing those things, but in order to keep us safe, we're staying away. So we've kind of committed to those things.
So speaking of family, support system, obviously you said you started out, you had a career using kind of in the journalism space. When you decided to make that shift and go it alone, how supportive was your support system? Did you have the full support of everybody around you? Or were some people saying, are you crazy? What are you doing?
Funny enough, because I've always been a bit of a maverick and always done my own thing, no one was particularly surprised. So it was quite good. And I do feel very lucky that I have strong family, tight friends who kind of will always support and share stuff share stuff that I'm doing, and who will kind of be my cheerleader as well, because it's really hard cheerleading on your own when you're in business. And I've also made really good friends amongst the business community and amongst my coaching community. And I've got, you know, my sister coaches and my sister friends, as I call them. They are there holding me up, supporting me. We network together, we share business together, we connect together, we test ideas out on each other. And yeah, without that kind of group, you're not going to succeed. And having people that are the uplifting people, those naysayers, there's always going to be a naysayer. And there's people that are worried because they care for you. Then there's a difference between sort of the two.
Yes, for sure.
When I kind of left that sort of corporate space, my mother was kind of a bit, but you know, again, these are the kind of things that you wanted and you're there. And what are you going to do? It's like, you know, we had the same conversation when I went natural, kind of when I rocked my afro to work. So, you know, it's a concern because this world isn't necessarily an easy one. And being a Black woman in business and being a Black woman in certain spaces as well. But I kind of rock it, own it. And, you know, I'm in my 40s now. And I really don't care about some of those things and what people think and all of that beliefs. Because when you find yourself and you're true to yourself and you're centered within yourself, it doesn't matter what's going on out there.
Oh, I love that. That felt very motivational. And actually, I think as you grow, as you develop, coming to that point where you actually realize that I don't care anymore. I think that's such an amazing moment when you have that realization, and particularly when something happens. So for example, you're wearing your natural hair and maybe somebody looks at you funny or something. And when you get to that point where I don't care, but remembering when you would have cared, I think that's such a pivotal moment in life. So actually growth has really occurred here.
Definitely. I mean, you know, none of my journey has been smooth or short or easy. My PhD took me 10 years because I was ill. You know, I started it before I had my son. We were told we'd never have children. So I thought, well, I might as well do this. And then I got pregnant. So it's like, okay.
Look at life.
So, you know, I was doing that alongside. And then I kept having to stop and start and stop and start. And I used visualization and just, you know, focusing on me crossing that stage, focusing on me getting that doctorate, focusing on why it was important for me to have it. So my PhD is all about race, class, identity, and belonging. That's my area of expertise.
I was going to ask, that was going to be the next question. Yeah. That sounds fascinating.
So that's what I researched, and I particularly researched the Ghanaian second generation, because that's my origins. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I actually finally finished this thing and graduated, on the day itself, I was the last person to receive it. And I walked across that stage, and all those feelings that I'd been visualizing for all those years were there. And I was like, yes. And so it was powerful. That's hard.
No, well done. Well, I'd love to speak more about that, actually. It sounds like a really interesting piece of work. So I'm going to assume then your Ghanaian heritage has a strong kind of impact, an important impact on your life. Tell us more about kind of your experiences of, were you raised here?
Yeah, I'm Ghanaian by North London.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm born and raised here, but I'm of Jamaican descent, but I'm very proudly Jamaican. And being Jamaican has had quite a big impact on kind of the trajectory of my life, I would say. With my grandparents being particularly instrumental in embedding, I suppose, the Jamaicanness in me. How important have your family members been in embedding that sense of Ghanaianness in you? Have you been back and forth? Do you visit often? Like, how strong is that link?
It's a link that I want to strengthen. So I spent my life here. I went as a baby and then didn't go again until I was 24. And that journey and the next journey I took influenced me changing my master's thesis. And I started looking at Ghanaian identity following some of the experience of that. And I actually met my husband when I was doing my master's. I interviewed him. So
this is beautiful.
There's a long story of that. It's a bit of a sad, but anyway, suffice to say, 15 years later, almost 16 years later, here we are. So, you know, that to me was quite a turning point about who I was and finding myself and being connected to that that sort of rounded space of this is who I am. This is really quite part of my identity. I mean, I still like tea and queuing, so I'm very British about that. And you know, I love a chip shop. So you know, but there's certain things that are still the hybridness of my identity, and it does play a part because in terms of connecting with family, and also some of the things that I want to impact is about impacting things in the diaspora and impacting things in Ghana as well, and being connected to there. We got engaged in Ghana as well, and I haven't been for a few years. Unfortunately, the last time I went was to bury my father-in-law, but the next time we were planning to have gone last year, but there was a bit of a pandemic. So, however, it is something we are keen to engage with more. I'm working with projects in Ghana. I'm, you know, doing stuff with diaspora individuals. I'm very keen to make sure that I am connected, not just through my parents, through my own connections. And it's not about me going somewhere and saying, yeah, I know everything and I'm going to change the world. It's not about that. It's like, how can my skills support somebody to uplift, develop, do their own things? How can there be an interchange of skills? How can my presence when I'm there be beneficial rather than, you know, a drain on resources if I'm there? So I'm really keen to kind of also have that. My son is doing language lessons at the moment. So he's learning our language because I never got to really learn it. So he's doing that at the moment as well. And it's important for him to kind of have that connectivity as well, and spend time, you know, with his grandma. He's lucky to do that. My grandmother was there, so I didn't get to have that relationship. So he has that with the elders, with the wider family. And the next step for us would be to have a base there, because as this pandemic has shown, we can work from anywhere.
No, for
and
sure.
Ghana's on the same time zone as the UK. So
Yes.
it's part of the trajectory going forward. And I would like my son to school though, and to engage and find, you know, have a different experience to being here in the UK.
I feel like I could just keep talking to you all day, but we're at about 40 minutes now. So I'm going to ask the last two questions. 3 pieces of advice that you would give to somebody sitting at home, hearing you talk, who decided, actually, I want to go into business, or was in the very early stages of business. What advice would you give to them?
In the very early stages, really consider your why. Why is it important that you do this? What are you connected? How are you connected to this? What's its purpose? Understand that deeply, because if you're going to be up to 1 o'clock in the morning, which you may do at some points, you kind of really need to know why you're doing that. So really connect to it. The second one is to get support. You cannot do this alone. You really can't. And that support may be in terms of actual practical skills, like, you know, social media or accounting, but it may also be people that can help you with childcare, with you know, just listening to you when you want to have someone to bounce ideas off, because that is so important for your growth and your development. And finally, don't underestimate how long it might take you. You may hear these people saying, yeah, overnight success. There is no overnight success. They spent years before people may have realized who they are, but they put the work in, they put the graft in. It takes time to build a healthy following. It's not just about likes, it's about connection and engagement. You know, you have 1 million likes, no one buys from you. So how are you connecting? How are you engaging? And understand that it may take you several years to have it the way you'd like it. And don't be afraid to change it. If it's not working, let it go and move on. You know, and there's no failure. Just feedback, as we say in Nlp.
I love that. Thank you. Great advice. She's the Boss recommends a book, podcast, film, any type of media that has really impacted your life, your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, I would say there's a lot of things that I love. TED Talks are really good. And there's one talk that may be useful just for thinking about how you show up. And it's Brené Brown's talk on vulnerability.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Because when you decide to do this journey, there's a point where you're going to have to show up. You are going to have to show up. You're going to have to put yourself out there in some way, form or fashion. And it's about how you do that. and looking at the connections. So I'd say that'd be a good one. But TED Talks are really good. Have a look. There's some really interesting stuff there. Yeah, and if I could do one more, it would be Amy Cuddy, and it's all about power poses. It's a really good one because that's a way of you being able to change your state so that you can show up in your power whenever you need to.
Fabulous. I'll definitely be checking that out. If people want to find out more about you, your business, where can they find you? What platforms are you on? What's your website?
I'm lurking on most social media platforms. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, more than anything. I'm also on Facebook, and I've got a group there if you want to come along and play. And my website is YvetteAnkrah.com. I like to keep things simple.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I really enjoyed speaking to you. And thank you, everybody, as usual, for watching, for listening. If anything that Yvette has said has really resonated with you, please leave a comment. Please make sure that you like, that you share with your networks if there's anyone that you think could benefit from listening to this conversation. And if you are in business and you would like to be interviewed as part of the series, drop me an email to Daniela@she'sthebossintl.com. And I'll catch you next week Sunday at 8 once again for another entrepreneur